Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Vera Schneider, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about my creative journey and how stories have become the fuel for that. I still don't know how I prefer to introduce myself exactly, and because that's a very big part of my creative journey, I won't do it right now. I won't define myself for now too much. Instead, I will start with saying that I have always needed multiple ways to channel creativity. Everything you can think of, from dancing, singing, playing instruments, drawing, painting, costuming, writing, everything, movies, reading, music. And I carried many of those things with me actively at the same time for years, as hobbies, of course. And then going into my preteens, I kind of started to drop something off and something else took its place. And at the same time, I began my very, very important journey into fandoms. And this was at a time where big things like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings were just about to break. So this was 2000, 2001, before the big movie releases. And we were just about to enter a very golden era of fandom. And that's also a very important time in history where internet became the thing, where fan forums became more popular, and when making websites became more accessible. And weren't they pretty? It's uncanny how this particular thing started me on my journey. I only realized it afterwards, what the actual significance was. But when me and my sister were around 11 and 13 years old, me, the older one, we created our very first virtual Hogwarts. And let me explain what that is to those of you who don't know, which is probably everyone. A virtual Hogwarts was a pretty popular thing in the early Harry Potter fandom. And I just yesterday found out that they still exist. Basically, anyone could create one by using free website platforms to build their own explorable versions of Hogwarts. And you'd have other fans come in and enroll as students and teachers, and you'd kind of maintain it and direct what they were doing there. And it would become rather intricate to build and maintain at some point. I learned a lot of HTML, JavaScript and CSS, which I still use in my work today. But in short, me and my sister ran a virtual Hogwarts that had dozens of students and teachers and thousands of website hits. And in this virtual School of Wizarding, we all participated in play through characters. And years later, I realized that that was the moment in time when I created my first game. And more importantly, my very first role-playing game. So this is me in New Zealand being the fan. Fandoms introduced me to a couple of phenomena very quickly. Midnight queuing, collectibles, fan art, fan fiction, cosplay, and the whole shebang. This experience was a revelation to me because I could channel my creativity into one single purpose. I could use it to tell stories. I could expand on the things I loved. I made my own costumes, drew, crafted, wrote, read, met other fans like crazy, and we learned to sing and play stuff and composed our own music as well. Well, let's not talk about that. I didn't know what exactly it was, but something started to make sense to me at this point. It would all fall into place when my friend introduced me to LARP, and that is live action role playing. For those of you unfamiliar with the term, it's basically a form of playing where you embody a character in a fictional setting. So you don't have a script for what you're doing in a LARP. It's basically improvised theater in a sense, but it uses play mechanics. So first those were Harry Potter LARPs created by fans for fans, and that kept me in the loop for a bit, but not for very long. It only took a few games for me to realize that I wanted to make them myself. And that's when it clicked. I loved telling stories. That was the thing. I loved telling stories so much, I wanted to use every skill I had to do it, down to website development. But I didn't want to keep telling stories within other people's stories. I wanted to create my own. And this is a picture from the 5th installment of our LARP campaign, Taivaansaaret, which we began in 2005. And that's the year that I would name as the year when my life began, other than the one I was born. Because for someone who had always been too restless and too hungry to focus on one thing for a long time, the care, complexity, and duration of our first big LARP project was a turning point. We were 16, 17-year-olds who created a game for 50 people that included event production and writing and designing, creating physical spaces, and running the whole thing. And it's to this date probably one of the better games I have made. I don't know how that's possible. For someone like that, it was a very deep experience, the sense of accomplishment we got from that. And I will never forget the feeling of belonging that I had making that happen. It gave me a canvas that I had never imagined could exist. I had the opportunity to color in stories with location, props, costumes, smells, tastes, even music and art. And I got to write events that would never be possible to produce in actuality. But when the people played the game, they had read the pages, and what I had wrote was reality for them in the moment that they played. And I was hooked on making LARPs from that very moment, no matter how exhausting it was from time to time. And let me tell you, it was. When time went on, I gained more knowledge and experience, and I was able to figure out what exactly I did when I created LARPs. It wasn't just about writing characters and stories and creating cool stuff. It was also event production and design. It was game design. And beneath all of these kind of easily recognizable skills, it was something in the realm of experience design. Skip ahead to 2014. I had dropped my original profession as a seamstress, which I hated, let's be honest. And I had landed doing quality assurance for Little Finland because I speak German, and you can imagine I wasn't very satisfied in that position either. My contract was ending, and I didn't know what I'm gonna do and what I'm gonna be, and I was completely oblivious to what I wanted to or could do. And then I sat in a bus listening to Miklagard Overture by Turisas and had a revelation. Someone somewhere must be responsible for making culture happen. Someone somewhere must be producing professionally. I would never be in a position to produce LARPs or something like that professionally, but surely I could produce something, because that's where I felt at home, because that's where I felt that I could affect the overall effect of the game, the experience of the game the most. So I did a quick Google search and found out that, yeah, cultural management is a thing and you can study it. Holy crap. And I got in to study it that same spring. And my professors immediately broke down the illusion that I couldn't specialize in games. They accepted LARP as a valid interest and a valid thing to develop. And this sparked my hunger to be recognized as someone valid in the games industry. I knew role-playing games, they didn't hold anywhere near the same weight as digital games did and still do, let alone LARPs. You know, the people with elf ears who hit you with a soft sword in the forest. That's not something you take very seriously, is it? But that's not actually what Nordic LARP is at all. But how do you go ahead and explain this thing that has 20 years of research behind it, that uses interactivity as an art form, storytelling through physicality? How do you explain the value of that to someone who's interested in developing mobile games? You don't. Well, yes, it just takes time. But role-playing and LARPs, they do both teach you skills that you need to create proper games, but not the production side. So I started to learn how to produce digital games. And I did that for a few years, and it's very useful, but that side of the industry never became home for me. I never felt very comfortable there. And simultaneously, as I progressed in this, I founded an association and produced my 2 biggest LARPs thus far. One with 110 players set in our Taimansaaret realm of stories, which was the picture a few slides earlier, and another installment of a vampire story, which was the previous image. But we founded an association in 2017 called Illusia, which we wanted to operate as a support organization for even bigger things, more professional productions. And that all crescendoed in 2018 when I was the CEO of my first co-founded game company, Critical Charm, and I simultaneously produced my biggest LARP title to date, which was Proteus Sotakarjojen synty, which is this one. It was a production where we transformed an old military base into a science fiction world. So we took their office wing and turned it into a research station, and took an airplane hangar and created a black box, basically the size of a couple of airplanes, where people could jump into a simultaneously running scene that was a time jump within the game. And they basically played a 10-minute warfare scenario there. It was a pretty cool project, but it was very, very labor intensive. And a little less surprisingly, I burned out a little bit. It was also because our team at the company wasn't a great fit, and some people problems refused to be solved, so I left. And this was December or November 2018, and I decided it was the perfect time to found another company. And now we get to Beyond Play. Now, in the background of everything I have just told you, which is a lot, ever since 2016 I had worked with other kinds of events as well, namely conventions and such, Ropecon and a few others. I had developed this interest in creating dialogue and development in the games industry and our role-playing scene, especially between these two. And this landed me in some jobs at EU projects, and that landed me in 2019 writing a report requested by the city of Helsinki concerning what it is that we LARP creators actually do. This was when our company Beyond Play was founded, and where all of the strands of this mess of my career started to make sense in some odd way. My report came to the conclusion that the way we tell stories and create experiences in LARPs, in our games, gives us a unique skill to understand participatory and interactive design. I didn't put it quite like this back then, but the core of my message was that we as Nordic LARP designers and producers have a skill that we can apply to other things as well. Our understanding and perspective can be something that is missing somewhere else. And we decided to put that to the test in our company. Here's a picture from the LARP Odysseus, which Johanna is excited about. It was the biggest production of Illusia in 2019, led by my friend and colleague Laura Kröger. It's arguably the biggest LARP production in Finland ever created. and it was highly tech enhanced and incredibly successful. It's, as you can see, basically we transformed an entire school into a spaceship. It's the Torpparimäki school in Helsinki, and it ran actively for 3 games, each lasting 2 days. And every system, lights, sounds, all around the ship, they were interconnected and ran for the entire duration of the time. It was a clockwork game where they basically were working shifts as characters in the ship. It never paused. It was incredibly impressive to pull off, so hats off to Laura and her crew. I was the bookkeeper. So because Laura also is a part of our team at Beyond Play, it made perfect sense for us to take a lot of inspiration from this project. In late 2019, we narrowed down our product concepts at Beyond Play to the one we wanted to create, which was and is a room-sized shuttle where you can play game after game after game, and we could use the interactive room, the computer simulated space and other elements to tell a bigger story. So basically while you go in and play a scenario, you can always return and play the next one. And at some point you have experienced a long story arc. And that's how Out of Orbit came to be. We began work on our game room, Out of Orbit, in early 2020. The perfect timing, the perfect year to create something that's based on physical play. Am I right? Let's skip to the part where I have told you how much COVID sucked, and move over to September this year, where we opened up our first version, our first game room. It's been running for a couple of months now. A weird thing to experience in the sense that usually when you design a game that's based on replayability, it's a product that you promise people, you build it digitally, a couple of iterations. You don't have to build the actual room to test it, but we built an actual room just to test it. Interesting. But escape rooms have always struggled with the fact that their builds aren't experienced that one person can play more than once. And we had basically accidentally stumbled into creating a room that, while it is definitely not an escape room game, still operates largely on the same principles that an escape room does. And we didn't actually fully grasp this fact when we started to do this. To us, it was a natural thing to take a room and a story. Of course, we could make it into a series of games. We don't even need the spaceship around us. We can just take a room and a story, and we can make people immerse and play even if it has nothing around you. But now we had the cool tech effects and we had the cool build, and of course we can do endless things with that. But we don't create games for LARPers. We create games for anyone who wants to play them, regardless of whether they know how to LARP or not, because let's face it, for many people, the thing that LARP requires is a very scary thing. You have to play, you have to throw yourself into something. We can't go into doing an actual product we sell to everyone, expecting that of people. And that's why our game design process is somewhere between that of a digital game, an escape room game, and a role-playing game. We are doing world building and narrative design in preparation for future chapters and other ways of expanding on our story. We are going to create, or we are already in the production of a game that is played interactively over Twitch stream. So look out for that. That's going to be something new and interesting. And our first episode that we have created for the actual game room is something you'd compare to, let's say, a tutorial level on a PC RPG. So we kind of teach the player how to play our format of game. All the while the physical build resembles that of an escape room crossed over with a digital game level. And it's by no means easy to create big immersive experiences with a concept like this, let alone convey a lot of story in a short period of time. it's much easier to do that in a LARP. But knowledge of how people operate when they are given freedom in a game like they are given in a LARP is the key to being able to do a game like Out of Orbit. If we had no prior experience of making LARPs, we would have had a lot of basic lessons and pitfalls to learn from. We still do, and a game developer always has. But unless you've told a story that uses not only every surface around the participant, but also those inside of them, you'll have a harder time doing this. When we expect to have people participate with their creative thinking, with their physical being, when we expect grown people to express playfulness, when we have the aim to immerse them in the story, we are working with the surfaces inside of them. We are using them as a surface, so to speak. When we make something highly interactive, something where human creativity and playfulness are given space, that's when we need to understand how to use their imagination to color in the gaps, and how to draw out certain reactions and behavior that enables the kind of thing that we want them to experience. So we are suggesting things to the people so that they can, without realizing, experience what we are suggesting. I think that's what my creative journey is all about. I have always wanted to be in the spaces where people interact with stories. In development, I'm there in the spaces between different parts of the processes that end up being a game. In storytelling, I'm there trying to find ways for players and readers to interact with my stories. And as a consumer, I'm there, even today, in fandom spaces, being the one doing the interacting and the claiming of the stories as my own. So perhaps I should reintroduce myself to you at this point. I'm Vera Schneider, full-time storyteller and fangirl, part-time CEO, game designer and producer. Thank you.